to order, February 25th, 6 p.m. We do have a quorum, all four members of the existing board are here. Article 1, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Article 2, public participation. Time that we open up about a minute or two per individual for a 10-minute period. Is there anyone here for public participation? Yes.
I just came down 6th Avenue and walked on our main street, and it's full of dog feces. Every hole is full, I mean, the size of my fist with cutler, and it's really gross. You're
Did
walking.
you say from
I
St.
came down
Thomas
6th Avenue, I got sprayed all the way down, of course, because it's so wet there, and then I took the main road, and I got as far as Robert's Jewelry, and Selectmen. It's
yeah.
full, all our poles, yeah, Sid mounted this on
Really?
the sidewalk
Oh,
there,
of
it doesn't make sense. It's really gross.
That's a point. Thank you for that point.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Is anyone else here for public participation? Seeing none, then we'll go to Article 3, which is to consider other business and adjustments to the agenda. And we do have a other business agenda to consider the 2020-21 emergency service contract with the Aroostook County Sheriff's Office. Mr. Town Manager, would you lead us through that discussion?
Yeah, and I want to add a word to that. It's for dispatch service agreement, emergency dispatch services that we have with the County Sheriff's Office. That is servicing our fire, EMS, and police department.
Is that inclusive of the ambulance department?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And in the past, historically, we long had the best storm or dispatch out of the mill. That ended a little over a year ago. And so they weren't, just to recap for those who weren't here at the time, I think we discussed this before. We looked at other options for dispatch services. One was Worcester County SO, state police, which were entertaining an offer, but they weren't very interested in state police, and also to whether or not they should be in-house. Comparing other comparable municipality would be Fort Kent, and their dispatch program runs up about $400,000 a year. So for us, it made sense for us to move in this direction. So what you have in front of you is basically, it's a year agreement. They increased their fee last year by 5%. For the 2020 and 2021 season, July 1 to June 30. The fee would be $33,846.75.
And that's for all departments
All
in
departments.
Madawaska.
All emergency departments.
In Madawaska.
Yes.
Do we still divide that expense through the 3 departments?
Yeah.
How much was that, Gary?
33,000.
Come on?
33,846.75.
And this is for 24/7,
Yeah.
365 and a quarter days a year. Okay.
Yeah, even
A lot cheaper than
even on
I-
February 29th. Yeah. A lot cheaper. Yeah. Would there be a motion to approve this?
Can I say something?
No, we're open, we're discussing as a board right now, public participation. Once we get into our budget discussion, just keep in mind, folks, that this is a meeting open to the public, but it is a selectmen meeting and finance committee meeting. So we're not gonna go back and forth on, except with the budget committee and with the selectmen.
Okay. Understood.
Did anyone make that motion, Doug?
So moved.
Moved by Doug, is there a second? Lori, any more discussion on this? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, consider the treasurer's warrants, they're on the table, there's a couple, is there a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Moved by David, is there a second?
Okay.
Second by Doug, any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Article 5, we're going to start the budget review. I've noticed, welcome budget committee members, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I see at least 5, there more?
6.
Oh, that's right, Lori. And Tom, you're the school rep, right?
Yep.
Welcome. Okay, so we'll get into that discussion. I was wondering if we've had a chance, remember on our last go-around on budgets, did we get a chance to review some of those that we flagged? Or is it too early to discuss those tonight?
Go ahead. We were gonna go back over it at another subsequent
Okay,
meeting,
as long as we can go over them, yeah.
sort of like a review.
Good,
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we'll have the oil contracts in, and we'll have all that stuff, so we'll have hard numbers for
Okay.
the stuff that's,
All right.
I'm just gonna leave it here. Or not, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my understanding, just so since most of the budget committee is here, is that we're doing this initial run-through so that we can hear from department heads to understand what this is. And then when we're done the initial run-throughs of all of the budgets, we're gonna meet and go through all of this.
Well, we're gonna meet
together,
as a
right?
board also.
We will too, but also the budget committee will meet.
That's correct.
So this is just an initial run-through that we're,
That's correct. I think I envision it this way, that we would, once we go through this and we go through the flagged items and we come to a consensus, then we should have a sit-down back and forth with the budget committee, and then we would move to, down the road at some point, to either adopt our budget, and then you guys could meet whether you want to, the typical process would be to what's the word they used?
Recommend.
Recommend the budget to the taxpayers.
So it starts here, it goes there, and it comes back here.
If they
And
have
then
any
it's going back
questions
there.
that we'd like to hear, or comments, we'd like to hear those before we actually take a final vote on our budget.
So we're talking, this could go back and forth twice? I mean, we're gonna talk about it tonight. We're gonna discuss some of the issues.
Yep.
They're gonna take over after this.
No,
Well, I mean, it's gonna be given to them for them to review.
they already
At the
have.
same time.
They already have
At
it.
the
So then it's coming back to us at that point for approval.
The only things that are coming back at some point, yeah, we're gonna.
It never goes back there.
Eventually, they're gonna have to go back and make a decision if they want to recommend that budget to the townspeople.
some of them have
After
some
the final budget
recommendations
is-
that we haven't really discussed too much. So what I was saying is that then, when we're done going through our first pass of this, it would be good for us to have a meeting, I think that's what we had
Correct.
understood we were doing.
That's correct.
And, just go through recommendations and stuff that we can then bring back
Yep.
to the
Yeah.
board before, you know.
All set with?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, we all set with?
Yeah.
Okay. Article 5, to consider the proposed elections expense budget, Department 140. You turn to that budget right here. Gary?
All right, in typical fashion, the way we've gone through, I will go through line by line, discuss each line item. If there are certain lines that I think you probably will have questions on, I might already have something to elaborate on or to expand on. If you have any questions about a particular line item, feel free to chime in. The department heads are here to talk about their respective budgets, and so you'll be getting the answers from either me or the department heads on their respective budgets for any questions that you may have. If there are particular lines that we might not have an answer to, if you want us to go back and check something out and bring back more information, we will flag that, and we'll go back over that on the review process. So with that said, are there any questions?
And my understanding, Amy, you're here to talk about your elections budget. Okay. If there are any questions.
Yep.
And in your packet, we also received 3 new different sales quotes based on the last section on the ballot books. We'll be discussing that as we go.
Do you guys also have any ones?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead.
So on the elections, Department 140, on the elections line, salaries and wages, it's flat funded at $66.25. Last year, we spent $43.75. Elections are, they vary from year to year when there's more election activity going on. This year is going to be one of those years that there's going to be quite a bit of to do with the referendum and election, with what's going on locally, state, and federal. Any questions?
And that encompasses all the wages of the ballot clerks,
Yep.
all, whatever election personnel you use in this process. Okay?
Employee benefits trends with the payroll. Any questions on that? Operating expenses, we've always funded meals. We put $500 in for meals, and what we'll do is for the election, for the team that's there, we will furnish drinks, and we'll get some pizzas or takeout and stuff like that. For everybody. During the elections, last year we spent $341. Any questions on that?
That includes, like we're having an election there next week, a voting, I should say, right? Primary. And all these expenses are for that as well?
Yes. Everything that we're going to
And
have.
for the
election.
school budget, and then for the well, not the municipal budget, but for the school budget that goes to referendum, that's included.
Right here.
And the general election coming up in November.
Mhm. We run the elections, only for the school. Postage, a couple $100 in there. We didn't spend much money in postage, $4 last year. Printing and advertising, $3,000. Again, that's, last year we spent $769. It depends on how much advertising we need to do. We have heavier election years than others. This year's going to be a heavy one. Any discussion on that?
Any questions from the budget committee at this point?
No.
Okay,
Yeah, and feel free to chime in. I'm always looking that way, but
excuse me, the finance committee.
supplies, $500. Last year we spent $458. That's all election-related stuff. This year we put in a place mark for ballot booths. Our ballot booths, and Amy can speak more to them. I know that they were purchased in the early '90s. And Public Works, when we have an elections, are the ones that assemble and disassemble the election booths, and they're the ones that make all the repairs. And they're out of aluminum. They're breaking a lot. They're thin. They don't weld very well. We try to weld them up, and they kind of just come apart. And so at some point, we have to talk about ballot boots. We talked about it last year. We're putting it in here this year for discussion. Amy put a proposal in. Amy, you can talk about how many booths we're expected to have per population. And she put an initial quotation, and she also gave you guys some additional information.
Clinton.
So typically, the state requires you to have one voting booth for 200 people. We have roughly, when I first started, we had like 4,000 voters. Now we're less than that. One of these units that you guys have the price for has 4 booths in it. They're not set up like your traditional ones. They're kind of like circle, a little different. That's kind of where they're going to now. I had them quoted out. I mean, even if we tried replacing one a year, I mean, that's 4 booths. It would kind of give Public Works a chance to take some parts from the ones that are no longer usable and try to repair the ones that we do have that are still usable, but need a little bit of repair and stuff. But for sure, there's 2 sets that are
Finished.
finished, yeah.
2 sets of
5.
5.
There's, in those old sets that they have,
Yeah.
there's 5 in one
Yeah.
container, and there's 2 containers,
How many booths do we have total?
25.
And did we put them all out at the same time?
Presidential, yeah. There's certain elections that they require you to have, like, normally it's your 200, but we end up putting extra because we have them, and I think at one point in time, they used to have probably a bigger voter turnout. So we still just put them up. It's a presidential election, usually it's really big
And
turnout.
everything's been
Primary.
adequate at this point to be able
Yes.
to, there's no slowdown as far as getting into a booth?
No,
Now, I noticed that your original cost, if we replaced 6 of them, that total came out to $6,763.
correct.
And then tonight, you've provided some more different quotes If we did one, if we did two, and if we did three. Could you go over that, Amy? And if we go, say, if we divide that by what, by 6, that would be a little over 1,000 per booth, right?
Yes.
So the one is 1,146.
And then the two, they're saying it's 1896. I really think there might be a typo with the
Yeah.
curtains, but I'll have to double check.
Yeah, because if you follow the first one, you're like, I think you're like close
They were
to
$199.
$400, $400 off.
I really think.
Do you have a
it's-
recommendation that you'd like to replace,
I mean,
or
even
have
if,
replaced?
I really think even if we did 1 year, like a set a year, eventually we'd be able to turn them all out, but would still give Public Works time to take parts off the, whatever is usable, off the ones that are hard to put up right now. They can only be welded so much and stuff, so we'd give them a chance to take out some of those parts and repair the other ones that we have, so we can try to make those other ones work.
So it wouldn't be, I know the rest of the board, but if we feel we can replace one per year on an ongoing basis, we'd be looking at $1,100 versus $6,000 one shot. In 6 years, we would have, and then in the interim, we'd be able to get parts to fix others.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I'm hearing, right?
I thought.
So instead of putting a $600 to $700 line item, we could put
1146.
1146 or $1,200,
And that would replace 4 units?
5, right?
Or does it
Four.
say 4
Four.
station
Four
board?
per
with,
unit.
Okay, 4.
But you're gonna take out a 5 and replace it with a 4.
I have 4, yeah.
Because
Have
right
we
now
not
have-
been doing this? Have we not been
Yeah,
working
Those-
it,
Those boots are over 20 years old.
and they all need to be replaced?
Not all of them.
Can we have somebody take a look at them and see if they're
Sure.
fixable?
That'd be great.
I think Public Works has been looking at
Public
that
Works
case.
has been doing it.
Yeah, they're the ones who've been
I know
looking,
they
repairing,
said
and,
tour about kaput there,
yeah.
but if you wanna have someone take a look at it, then that's fine with me.
Well, who would look at it? I mean, people that use it and set them up are the Public Works.
Right.
That's where the jurisdiction should be with that. No? They're the ones who would tell you yes or no.
Well, I mean, we're not voting on anything.
No,
So if
but-
If Dave wants to go look at them, I mean, let him. I don't know. Are you proposing you're gonna go and,
I'd like to take a look at them.
Well, you can look at them, and like any of us can go over
Yeah,
and look at them,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah. Are they down here?
I believe so, yes.
So, we're gonna flag that item for now? Because we're not ready to say if it's one set or 2 sets or the whole thing.
right, we're not voting on.
We're not,
any of
but
this
we're
tonight,
flagging it,
right?
right?
Yeah, yeah.
As further review. Okay,
For further review, whether we have one or more, but we're
Right.
ready to go with this particular product.
yeah, I think so. I think so.
Well, she needs to double check your report.
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah. Okay,
All right, anything else on this particular department? Okay. Article 6. Consider the proposed development and code budget, that's Department 100. Let me get there. Mr. Town Manager, you get the floor.
So this year, starting with salaries and wages, we are at 105,565. That's a slight increase over last year. That is due to employment agreements that, that we've been hiring, Keith, we brought him in. One of the things that's changed in developing codes and assessing is that we no longer have a contracted assessor. We used to have somebody come in here and do all the assessing, we pay them $16,000 a year. To do that, he's here, when we looked at this department, when Keith's predecessor left, he gave us an opportunity to look at finding some efficiencies to try to see if we could do more with that department in-house. And one of the thoughts is that we could combine, we could find somebody who could do both economic development and assessing. It took a while to find somebody. There wasn't anybody out there with that immediate skill set and those certifications, but we did hire somebody within the 20-year agreement who would be the town's economic and community development director and assessor. Keith has passed his exams, both for community development, grant work, and assessing, so we are no longer going to be contracting out for $16,000 a year. We also had a different assessor coming in to take care of the personal property accounts. The one doing real estate didn't do personal property. I believe that one was a $6,000. Was it a four?
Only in our past, it was
$4,000.
4,000.
17 for 17 for their
The
personal.
real estate is 17.
Yeah, that's an expense that we will no longer be paying because we're doing all that work in-house. Any questions on salaries and wages? And that's for both the director and the code enforcement officer. Any questions on that?
That's not just
There are two positions in that.
two positions, correct?
You have questions?
No, we just figured it out.
Okay. Going down to employee benefits, that trends with the payroll, means get retirement, health, 10,137, health insurance at 36,317, and that's reflective of a 4% increase this year in health insurance. For 6 months, health insurance?
7.
Was it 7? Okay. Social Security trends with the payroll and the Medicare as well. Operating expenses. If you have any questions, you can stop me. I'm
Yeah,
just
we
gonna go
will,
through.
yeah.
And if there's something that I can't answer, Keith can chime in. Dues, subscriptions and memberships, and Keith has reduced that by $500 to $1,500. Last year we expended $1,286 in that line. Miscellaneous, $400. Last year we expended $472.
What's covered under miscellaneous?
Miscellaneous, Keith?
Yeah, I had a few different, like just for an example, recently the Kirk Minahan podcast that came up, they asked us to provide, they wanted us to give a key to the city to them. So it was stuff like that, where things kind of pop up that don't fall into any specific,
Got it.
so.
Any other questions on that? Postage, $400. Last year we expended $83. Printing and advertising, $1,800. Last year we spent $1,837. Travel and training, $6,000 is a reduction from last year of $8,500. For the community development director. Travel and training for the code enforcement officer for $1,000. Last year we spent $562. And travel and training, CEO, Eagle Lake, and Senegal are both $1,000 respectively. So mileage that we pay code enforcement officer to travel to service those communities, we pay.
And that's by agreement that we have with them that we're servicing those communities.
Yes.
So, can I just ask, we're paying for travel for somebody to go service another community?
Yeah, but
Is
we
that how
have,
that works?
But we get revenues coming in.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
we have interlocal agreements. We provide code enforcement services for Senegal and Eagle Lake. So we get revenue out of that, which is basically what we charge is our per diem for what it costs that employee, salary, wages, benefits, all that stuff, into an hourly rate. And we basically have an agreement with them for X amount of hours per year, and they pay us for that. So part of the, like the 105, 565 costs for payroll is offset somewhat by, like what we get for Drew's wages, the CEO's wages when he's servicing other communities. We also do a little bit of work in Grand Isle, but very little. It's more as an as-needed basis. There's no hours there per se.
At some point, does the finance committee have the ability to review any type of, I guess, we're looking at an expense budget, but we're not looking at any revenue at
We
this
will
point.
be
Is that
looking at
something that,
revenues also.
I mean, if I look at this from just an expense standpoint, I may have a lot of questions that might get answered. If I can look at revenues and see what's offsetting, it's a little bit hard to sit and
I guess, make a judgment call based off what you're looking at for just an expense
So
without justification.
can we surmise that this is not a losing proposition for us? Can we at least surmise that at this point before we look at revenues?
We charge what basically it's costing us for the employee per hour. So what his salary is or hourly rate,
Plus
plus the health insurance.
his travel?
We fact, every year we update that number, find out what that translates to an hourly rate. What is this employee costing us? And we charge the town of Eagle Lake or St. Agat for so many hours a year, and they pay us accordingly. And it's-
You bill them a flat fee?
Yeah.
And then a per diem after that?
No, we
No
build,
flat.
Just a flat fee?
we build them a flat fee based on an estimated.
And somewhere or somehow, we must have a balance sheet on that, saying, well, we spent so much, and this is costing us so much, and we're getting so much,
Mhm.
you know, for code enforcement and for ambulance.
So I had asked, I don't know if you remember, Dana, but I had asked, like, I'd like to see the revenues over last year and the year before. So maybe, I mean, we're kind of getting late into this now, but next time, if we're looking at Rec 2, if we could have all of that information to match up as we're going through it, it would certainly make this process a lot easier.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? If not, moving down to supplies, $750 for office supplies.
Well,
What?
these questions here are bringing up something in my head. We have X amount of hours that we've agreed to with each of the communities for those services.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say there's a special thing going on in that community and say it requires 10 more hours. Can we bill for those 10 hours?
We can. I think the way the agreement works is that it's sort of, let's say for instance, they're in Senegat or they're in Madawaska or in Eagle Lake, the CEO. The agreement is that somebody from Senegat can call here if they're not there putting in hours. Likewise, somebody from Madawaska, if they needed to get to the CEO for something that was pressing, you know, he'd be available there as well. So there's some reciprocity that, you know, the CEO is available to all the communities during the work week, but we do allocate a certain amount of hours to the CEO in each community based on the per diem rate and how many hours that we say that he's going to be there.
Top of your head, do you know when these agreements would be renewed again?
Annually, it's tied to the fiscal year.
It's an agreement for a year.
Yep.
Okay.
How many ambulances does the town of Madawaska operate?
That's not part of this discussion right now.
Oh, it's not?
No, this is just the development. We're gonna
Oh,
have
we're
the-
not,
yeah,
we're not in the
there
right
yet.
place, okay.
Yeah.
Utilities, we have a digital sign, we talked about that before, it's the sign over by the McDonald's property. That sign is gonna have to be moved. We spent $1,000, we're budgeting $1,000. We historically budgeted $1,300. The reason for the expense for that sign is because it's, the data is uploaded into it via signal, via cell phone signal. And so the data, every time we put a message into the sign, we're charged for the data, if you will. We know that we're gonna have to move the sign. We haven't decided where it's gonna go yet. It can go into either the pocket parks or the farmer's market. And the thinking is if we can put it as close as we, excuse me, we can to the town office, we're gonna set it up with Wi-Fi, so we can just Wi-Fi signal into it and then not have to deal with data charges. And that would hopefully, that expense would be minimized, and we probably have to leave a little bit of money in there for maintenance, because there are little things that go out every now and then, bulbs and stuff like that. Any questions on that?
How much does it cost us for power for that sign?
Oh,
Mark, we're not part of the discussion. This is between us. For now.
I would like to flag that one though,
Okay.
because it obviously costs us $1,300 this year, $1,300 next year, kinda getting expensive.
thank you. But like I said, we are planning on moving it and changing the, how we can get data into the sign. Right now, we don't have the ability to send anything out there other than through a wireless data plan.
Can I make a suggestion?
Last year, Ken, to answer your question, we had budgeted
1,300.
13 and we only spent 462. Gary?
Okay, moving on, abatements is something that we put in, $5,000 a year. If there's a property tax abatement application that comes in and gets approved, so there, we would find post that expense. Last year, we used all of that. Agent fee, that's what I discussed about earlier, what we were charging for real estate, the real estate agent and the personal property agent. Last year, we spent $17,250 for real estate and $4,000 for personal property. Those expenses are gone. Moving on, business development activity, we could reduce the budget by $1,500 from $6,500 to now $4,000. Last year, we spent, this department spent $1,995 there. Any questions?
Why are we reducing that?
I mean, everybody went into this budget process trying to find places where we could, based on historical expenditures and knowing that we want to try to find some savings that, you know, we did find stuff where we thought we could. Keith, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm comfortable with 4,000 in that. And I'm obviously gonna try to make it, just use it when you need it.
You know, I think you all know how I feel about this particular department, but in my assessment, this is the most important one of all. This is the one that we have to work on the hardest to try to develop this community and to try to build it up. And here we are, we're gonna cut those funds. There's so many other places we could be considering here, and this one is the one that we shouldn't consider. As a matter of fact, we should be considering increasing this one, because I feel you're gonna be on the road a lot more than you think you are. I mean, $4,000? I mean, again, this is the department to me that's gonna make it or break it for a lot of us here. I mean, this is where we're gonna decide if we're gonna move forward with this community and how we're gonna develop the downtown and whether we're gonna see new businesses coming in, and here we are, we're gonna cut the proposed budget for that department. Talk to me. I mean, you know, I don't, maybe you're planning on something beyond what we see for this year and you want to see something different. I don't, but to me, this is a really very important department.
Yeah, no, I understand. And again, I just, going into this process, everything's been the scope of get everything down as low as you can. So when I look over it, I'm trying to look at it through that lens, and I mean, I think I can
do it with
given
the
the circumstance, I think I can make do with what I have for sure. Yeah.
So I think, no, go ahead, Chris.
It's listed as business development activity. Can we define what the activity is? What are we looking at? What are we talking about when we say an activity? What is that?
I mean, it's sort of a broad.
Right, that's
I interchange the 400 and 500 business development and community development activity. So anything that would go on, any sort of event that would go on, any sort of, you know, promotion that would go on, anything like that, I would take it out of that.
He's already got 6,000 in travel.
Again, which is why I think I feel comfortable with what I put.
$6,000 for travel on the previous page.
On the previous page. So like your time or expenses, meal, travel, would all come out of that particular?
Not necessarily, because I got travel and training.
Yeah, I saw the travel.
Yeah.
There, so.
Yeah.
So what would actually come out of this 4,000?
I mean, as you can see from last year, I only used, you know, a little under $2,000. I'd have to look through and see every line item that I use that for, but it's more, like I said, I interchanged a lot of it with community development stuff. I work hand in hand with the rec sometimes to put something together. You know, programming events would come out of that. Anything in the scope of being able to help, you know, to put something together that would help a business in turn by creating activity. But again, looked at previous history.
One of the things that we've done in the past is like WAGM around Christmas time will come in and they'll go to all of the businesses in the community and they'll try to do a group Christmas package
Mhm.
for advertising.
Mhm.
And so they'll come to the town and they'll say, if we can go out and get 10 businesses willing to do a Christmas advertisement, would you help out with the cost of that? And so we funded that, and we've done our share. And, the goal is to try to get as many businesses on and make it affordable to them. And we've done, so those are the kinds of things that, where these kind of expenses would be
Well,
posted to.
Then to me, this is, I don't want to say, it's a little deceiving because the way you title this, the way it's titled, it basically means that he's going to do less activity in the realm of business development. It's just the way it's titled, and it just sounds to me like we don't want to cut his exposure out there. We want to increase it. And I mean, yeah, we can just maybe flag this for.
Doug, you proposing the 400 and the 500 accounts under that, which would be the 4 and the 3,000, the 4,000, 3,000?
Well, the 4 right now, as we
Or
see
for
it.
the 4, you want to flag that one?
Yep. The 3,000 is, the 3,000 is what, just for community development?
Mhm. Flag the 4.
Well, can we have some more information on that one?
Yeah, I can grab I can grab what I spent. I can look over history and see what I
Okay.
spent last few years and,
Okay.
and mark that. Certainly
I
a conversation.
tend to agree with Doug because out of all of the departments, this is the one in my mind too that would be the most important to us right now, and it's the one that had significant cuts. Like significant, I mean, it's, I think the only one that really had some cuts that the,
But if the department head believes he can cut
yeah.
20,000,
I hear that.
he should know.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Here we are questioning the guy who runs the program.
You're right, but in essence too, he's fairly new. And so if he gets called out more often than he thinks he is, or we're gonna push him to get out there, and he's spending more money than we see here, then I don't want him to hold back because he's saying, okay, my budget is blown.
My vote's with him.
Again, I think by, getting a little bit more information, understanding what activity is versus
Yeah.
whether it's business development or community development, let's understand what that is
Then let's.
That's a good point.
before we
let's
jump to
flag
that
them both.
conclusion.
Flag them both?
Yeah, flag him.
Okay.
Next one is the Canadian Day Congradi before that. Historically, last year we spent 4,035. That one we came under, it came close to being cut last year. We hemmed and hawed on that one. This year Keith has proposed that we, for discussion, that we don't put anything in there. Historical on that one is that the Canadian Day in Congrès is what that came out of 2014's World Canadian Congress over here, and it was an organization that was formed in Edmonton. There's representation here. Vinny sits on that board over there, and so there is a branding, if you will, of the region of Acadie that takes place, and we're technically supposed to benefit from that, because we have membership and representation. And the Acadian parade, the Acadian Day that we have here, where they've done the Tantamar and the meal in the park, is part of that. So we want to continue funding that. That's something that we had good discussion about last year, if we want to continue to do so or not.
It brought a lot of people here.
It did.
That one day.
Yeah, I mean, there were several hundred people in the park,
Hmm.
So there's some trickle-down benefits to the community from that economically. I mean, I can't quantify what that is. I know that they put on free lunch for people, and they serve all kinds of good stew and food and trout and all kinds of stuff. So it is a community event. There's some value in that. It brings the community together, which is not something that's lost. I think it's a good thing. And there's people that are really dedicated to this program. Vinny's been a strong advocate, and he's dedicated a lot of his resources and his time towards this effort. And then, Madame Canan, Priscilla Canan, and her little group have worked very hard on this Acadian Day thing too. So, I think they would be disappointed if we were to abandon it. But again, if we don't provide the resources.
I was there
I don't
last
see
year.
that happening.
Yeah, I was there last year during that activity, and I was very impressed with the amount of people there. I'd have a hard time not funding something in that. But
What was funded before, I just, in my mind, like if I'm putting that in perspective, we were giving $4,000 for a one-day event. And here we're taking business development and cutting that to $4,000 for a whole year. And again, like I trust Keith, I just don't want him to feel held back by his budget. But $4,000 for one day to bring in
Well,
200 people.
yeah, that's
like,
not just the
It's not-
one day thing, though.
it's
There
not
was,
just the one
there
day.
was the participation in the dues thing with the, across the river.
And so are we not a part of that anymore?
We still have membership with them, we haven't been very active in that regard over there.
But some of the money that we budgeted would go there.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could have checked to them.
Do we know what that amount is for the
That's,
dues?
that's what it is right there.
The whole thing was dues?
Whole thing went there?
Yeah, 5,600, 5660, 60?
Yes.
And then
No.
they would,
No.
Part of that was the Acadian Day. What it is the membership, I believe, is $1 per citizen in that town.
okay.
So which I think was like a little over
$4,035.
$4,000. Yeah,
Okay.
whatever
That's
it
what
was,
that is.
yeah. So again, I am not for or against this. I zeroed it out to have this discussion, because again, looking through the lens of we gotta look at everything, right? I just wanted to bring that up as if you're looking at a possible avenue, there's that.
Do we,
And I know Vinny came to speak, I think Don, you were probably
Yeah.
the only one on the board at that time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was traveling that day, so I wasn't able to see that meeting, but I did, Vinny had sent me,
See, the more we're talking, and stuff, and what Selectman Sears said a while ago in regards to the areas that can grow this community or potentially, hopefully attract some business, or the efforts towards that, kind of fall a lot into this year. Whether we want to continue funding at a certain rate, that's one thing for discussion, but I don't think we should be zeroing it out completely.
right. But I mean, if we sign up, if we're gonna fund to get that membership again, it's gonna be another, $4,000 of that or whatever it is, yeah.
do
somewhere
we,
around.
do we have another line item here for the Acadian Day? Is there any other line item other
For
than
the
what?
Canadian Day, I don't think.
Are we seeing anything else somewhere down the line other than this? Is this the only one that we have in
Right.
the budget?
For Canadian Day, I think you're right, that's the only.
So this would have paid a membership,
Yeah.
and the Acadian Day is done strictly by volunteers. Am I understanding? There's no
That
money
is
coming
correct.
from the town
That's
for
how it
that,
works,
right?
yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I can tell you, just based off my experience being on the Acadian Festival, I know this past year was the first year I've been involved directly with the Acadian Day. It happens to be that the Acadian Day was actually, this biggest celebration was held, I want to say it was in Moncton or somewhere. So, yeah, that is done solely by volunteers, pretty dedicated group of volunteers, beyond the Acadian Festival. I don't want to say I'm for or against. It is the Acadian heritage, right? So, you have to consider what it is, whether it grows or whether you have an impact on your business or community. I wouldn't want to guess. If we're paying a fee of $4,000 across the river for something, to be quite honest with you, I'd rather keep the $4,000, do something here, because there ain't a darn Canadian that's coming over here to do anything for the town of Madawaska.
That's right.
So if we're looking at it from a standpoint, what's the value of that $4,000? In my own opinion only, I would rather see that $4,000 go to the Acadian Festival or somewhere that will benefit directly to the business community here locally and not across to the Canadian border. That's my experience from what I know. I know whatever we gave for them, there was not one Canadian that came across from any Congress or anything over there that came over to help us do what we did over here. That's all I can tell you.
A little more historical perspective on that is, all of the valley towns were doing this membership thing when they started. Van Buren, Senegat, Frenchville.
This is back in 2014.
Back in 2014, and so this organization is a continuation of that, and their membership is what fees are what, so other towns have dropped out of this.
No, they have.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I know when I was in Southern Gap, we stayed on for a couple of years and that was it.
The return on investment was not seen.
Well, and, you know, I'll say it again. I'm not saying it's not worth spending money on the Acadian Day. What I'm saying is it's not worth sending $4,000 across the the St. John River, I can tell you that. So if you're gonna keep that budget in there, give that budget to somebody in this town that's gonna do something for this town and not send it across that river. It's as simple as that. And I'm telling you flat out exactly what goes on with that, I can tell you firsthand. You know, there's no help coming from that river across the other side.
I can't answer, I can't answer to that, I don't know.
Let's flag it.
I'd flag it for more discussion. Let's see, maybe we can talk with Vinnie and see, you know, I know he's on that. He represents
Yeah.
that committee on our behalf, so let's.
Yeah.
What
I
I
mean,
don't
he
have,
has a
a-
different perspective.
Right, he possibly may.
what I don't have an answer for is whether or not we could have the Acadian Day without the membership. I guess we could have our own if we wanted to, but
Yeah.
I think there's an affiliation there.
I guess we could have a Madawaska Day or whatever else we wanna call it, but.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, and nothing stops us from doing a Acadian Day picnic in the park.
yeah, great. Okay, let's go on. Yep.
Flagging that one.
Three in a row, yeah.
Next line item is engineering, $3,000. Last year we didn't spend any. The reason why we have $3,000 in engineering is because sometimes we have grant applications that we put in, study grants and things like that. We can access those grants, but we're required to do a preliminary engineering report. And so that's pretty commonplace. Keith, you want to talk about that?
No, I mean, you spoke on it. It's just sort of there as a place mark that if there is a grant opportunity that comes up that involves some planning and something we have to fund, that we have a line item to fund.
In the past, we've missed out on some of that because we didn't have any money in there to be able, whatever we could have missed out on, I can't remember, but it's good to have a little bit of dollars in there.
I mean, the goal, if we can do things without touching that, is to
Absolutely.
continue to not touch it, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's nice to have it.
Lien cost and filing fees, $15,000.
Gary? Let's see that the engineering costs, there's 3,000 budgeted.
Mhm.
If we don't spend any,
Mhm.
does that amount go to the undesignated
Yes.
funds?
Yes,
Thank you.
As does everything else.
yes. Unless it's dedicated to a certain project or something.
If it's not spent though.
If it's not- Yeah, even if it's not spent.
It
All
would have
it
to be-
goes,
It would have to be a reserve account.
that's what I mean, that's what I was trying to say, a reserve account, yeah. That's what I was trying to say.
Lien cost and filing fees, $15,000 is what we've flat funded over the years. Last year we spent $12,549. That's for cost of liens, filing liens, and discharging liens. Property tax only at the registry of deeds. Questions on that? Property mapping, which is our tax maps, $4,000. Last year we didn't spend any. This is one of those accounts that when we did we kind of looked at our budget this year and said, can we hold back on certain things? And we talked about maybe, we haven't done it. We didn't do it last year. We're gonna have to do our tax maps and need to be updated.
If we didn't do it last year and we do it this year, are we still looking at the same amount of money to get it done?
Yes. I mean, typically, we do tax maps every year, but our tax map guide was unavailable.
Quick question on that there. You try to stay as current as you can on a yearly basis, but is there any rhyme or reason that it couldn't happen every other year?
It couldn't.
I mean,
Go ahead.
perfect
On a
example is right
schedule.
now, but as you look through those maps, if you go look at the big copy, there's a lot of where land
Handwritten
splits have
stuff like
happened,
that.
and you see a lot of red, so I mean, it's certainly in need of a good update, but I agree with you. Depending on how much activity happens in a certain year, it wouldn't be a big problem to go.
And keep in mind too, that we put our tax maps online, and so any hand changes that we do in the office are not done on the website either, so, they get worn out, we need updates.
Who does the mapping for us?
It's been Matthew McDonald.
Is he still continuing?
He wants to, he hadn't been able to this year. So we have to follow up with him to see if he's going to be able to.
Okay. Do we have any other sources that we can go to get that done?
I've quoted out, there are a couple companies, I've had a few requests to have everything be done electronically, so that the updates can be done electronically every year, but the upfront cost is, I believe, I got one quote for to get them done electronically, I think it was $12,000 or $14,000. That was the upfront, the initial cost, and then, I forget what the cost was every year after that to update them electronically, which is certainly a lot more user-friendly. But again, it's a large cost, so there are other companies that do that, and if something happens that Mr. McDonald's not able to, certainly get a quote. We'll get a few quotes and make sure that we,
The trend is to digitize everything, and that's ultimately where things are going. A lot of municipalities have moved already to having digital tax maps. We're not, of course, we can continue to do what we're doing now. But
Okay.
And we already skipped the last year, so even if you say every other year, this would be the year.
This would be the year, yeah.
right, it's just a matter of whether we look to do it between now and June, or we do it, after July, basically, because at some point, I either have to do it up until the end of June, or this budget or next budget, it's gonna have to get done.
Right.
keep in mind too that it's worthy of mentioning, like, your tax maps can be updated. It's not necessarily that it's going to be, you might not necessarily say one, like if you go every other year, there's a certain amount of work involved in those splits and putting that work down. So it's it costs so much amount of money to print the maps, but there's a lot of work that goes into it too. So I'm not entirely sure that if we did it every other year, that cost would creep up a little bit, and so there'd be more work to update them. Because the map guy has to go through all the transfers and splits, and there's a lot of hourly work associated with that.
Okay. Following what Lori just said, that on the other year, that's true, because we already have a $4,000 in that current budget. And we're looking at the future budget, so if we wanted to go every other year, we either, like Keith said, we get it done this year, and then we could skip the 2020-21 year.
And I was making calls this past fall, and then when we had this department head meeting not too long ago where we wanted to look at the budget, I just put the brakes on it. Again, just holding it, but again, it's gonna have to get done at some point between now and the end of this year.
So you'd be so you'd be using the current budget.
Either one, I mean, I'm okay with either of those, but one of those two budgets is gonna have to incur
Because
that.
if you don't do it this year with the current budget, then that money's going into the undesignated fund.
Right,
And then we budget a new item for the upcoming year.
correct.
Okay. Does that require us to flag that one again for more discussion, or what's your?
That should be pretty straightforward, I think. I mean, it's,
I think we could flag it, I think we should flag it, and we could very well take it out for next year and try to spend the one that we have budgeted
So we'll
for
flag
this
it.
year, spend it now.
I'm okay with either of those options.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion on development codes and assessing? Finance committee?
No.
All set for now? Article 7, the ambulance budget, Department 300.
On the ambulance department, we'll start right off at the top with salaries and wages. We are at $401,400, essentially, pretty much just flat funded from last year. Any discussions on that?
So that's,
Questions, I mean, excuse me?
so there's an increase there of
Buck?
a buck over the,
Right.
This one on the
but
health
what's been
budget.
expensed out, I mean, 12/31/19, I'm showing 194,842. That's half the year,
Yep.
half the budget cycle. So we're gonna, it's pretty close.
Close, yeah.
How many people in that department?
6 full-time, between drivers and licensed providers, we have 12, 13.
Sorry?
12 or 13,
12 or 13.
yeah, part-time and drivers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the way it's been for a few years, or?
Thing with per diem is it only costs us if they work. That's it. There's no benefits with them. So the part-time or the full-timers are the ones that you have the benefits associated with all that. So part-timers, I can have a pool of 20 people. It won't cost us any more money.
Are you keeping track of how much time you spend to go to the other towns when you service the other towns on your labor? Are you keeping track of that?
Our downtime with Frenchville and St. Agatha, pretty much the same thing as if it would be Madawaska.
Now, I'm saying if you're gonna do 10 calls to Senegat and 5 to Frenchville, do you know what your labor cost is for that year per town?
Per town? I guess I'm not following exactly what you're saying here.
You would have to take.
Every
basically
time you
that.
go out of the station
Yeah.
to go service Senegat,
Mhm.
you need somebody to replace you
Right,
down there.
yeah.
So how much of those people, that replacement time, how much is that costing us because we're servicing other towns?
That's costing us, if you figure somebody's wages at time and a half, if it's a full-timer, if it's a part-timer, then it's just a $25 pay for a call-in for 2 hours. And you get the minimum 2-hour call-in. You're looking at anywhere from $150 to $200 maybe.
But you're not keeping track of that for
No, not
like,
even-
for
not
the
even
total
that
year?
much. No, I haven't, that's not something I've kept track of. I've averaged the amount of call-ins that do occur to try to come up with my salary budget, because that does obviously increase the salary budget when you try to figure out how many call-ins per year are going to occur. And that's a tough one to get right on the head because I don't know how many calls we're gonna get.
We're coming back to the same story we were talking about a while ago, is trying to cost out what's costing us here in town.
Yep.
To service Senegat and to service Frenchville separately.
And what ties into that?
Are we in the red or in the black? Is basically what we're,
From what I've, with discussions with Dana and all that, I mean, from what I've understood, we've been in the black. We have not been, I mean, the last time we had a discussion anyway, that was the case, or that we were not spending more than we were making.
I'd like to try to find a way to get a little balance sheet on that if we
Mm-hmm.
can, so we can at least track it.
Mm-hmm.
Because year over year, your expenses are gonna go up, and you're gonna have to find a way to either
Yep, I understand.
raise your prices for these towns or whatever.
I wish I had those numbers, Dave, but maybe what you wanna know is, cause I did have these discussions, it's easy to understand if you look at how much they get paid per call. And if they're making, a $400 profit for the call, but it only takes them $25 or costs them, so maybe it's hard to split by town, but if you could give us by call, I know that those numbers show you're in the black, so
Right.
if you could get us that would,
Sure.
Yeah,
it's clearly.
if you could do it by call, so if
profitable.
it's 25%, then we kinda know where we stand, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get you something, Dave.
And to again, bring back my other thing, have we bought a third ambulance so that we can service these 2 extra towns?
The third ambulance was bought, yes, for that reason, so this way, if one would go down for any reason or another, when we have that extra coverage area, we didn't wanna be down to just one ambulance, we
Yeah.
wanted to be able to provide backup.
And that ambulance is stored not in town here, somewhere.
Yes, it is.
This is a
All three
of them?
ambulances are at the
They're all
station.
3 here.
We were
Yeah.
fortunate enough to have the
Okay.
fire department make some space on their end there, and we
Okay.
were able to get one of their bays, and park it over there, yes, so.
Now, the ambulance department, on recollection here, is a department that bills. There's a lot of insurance billing and stuff. So there's a revenue on the other side.
There is.
Yeah, and that's going back to what Chris would like to see what that revenue is, but traditionally, we're not in the hole on that overall budget, right? Traditionally, we're making money.
Don't
We're
think
making
so.
money, but the ambulance department as a whole, even in the past and current, the town tax dollars do subsidize the ambulance
Exactly.
department,
Got it?
okay? And that is every year,
Yeah,
Yeah.
historically.
okay. Because I know you build up a reserve, or you have in the past. Is that because we've allocated
It's because
through
he
the budget
generates,
process?
right, so he generates, basically every year we put in a revenue number.
Right.
So any revenue that they bring in excess, this year was $300,000, that basically goes over to their reserve, anything in excess of 300,000.
Reserve account for.
Okay, for their ambulance department. That's how their reserve is built,
Okay.
okay? That number can fluctuate. You all can choose, instead of 300,000, it could be 500,000. I've seen that before too. So there, that would basically lessen the subsidy if you would do something like that.
Okay.
Following?
Yeah, I
Okay,
am.
super.
So with the ambulances, that we generally get 70% reimbursement from the insurance companies. And so that 30% is what's,
The local is something.
is a local, not dollar for dollar, but that's where we're having to cover it. In the case of the communities that we service, we charge, let's say what we get for a fee for an ambulance call, 70% of the call, of that cost. And the balance that we charge a municipality like Frenchville and Senegat is the 30% times the average number of calls. So that what we're doing over there for them makes us whole. That transaction makes us whole, so that we're not subsidizing over there. We are subsidizing over here, the town, to the ambulance department. So.
So when we see a $600,000 budget, that's the amount that's appropriated.
That's correct.
But the amount that's raised is a lower amount because it's offset by some of those revenues.
Correct, by that 300,000,
Okay.
for example, and that's the number that's picked every year.
Yeah.
Okay, that number can fluctuate based on what you folks decide. And also in addition to that would be the service contracts for St. Agatha and Frenchville that we service, in addition to that 300,000
Okay.
following.
So I think that's some of the key information right there. Whatever that service contract is, and again, we're looking at expense, not necessarily on the revenue side, and that makes it extremely difficult to really understand how this budget fully works in and of itself.
Right, because every department works
Correct.
different. I mean, you've got the police department that doesn't generate a lot of revenues. The ambulance department has its own billing, but that, I mean, it's not economic in some
Well, let me ask a
departments.
generic question or a general question in regards to that. Normally, we wait to do our revenues a little bit later because we're waiting to see what's gonna happen from the state of Maine or whatever. Are we able to, at this point in time in our budget process, are we able to generate a budget number, expected revenues?
We can do anything projected, so, I mean, I don't, it's definitely possible, I'm putting like a 3-year, of actual, and then, something projected. But you are right, we typically wait till, towards the tail end to, look at revenue.
You're shaking yes?
Well, I think like looking at like 3 years of the actuals, the past 3 years of actuals is gonna give us a better understanding versus looking at something projected. Something projected is subjective in
Yeah,
itself.
it
So,
absolutely is.
let's look
Yeah.
at what we've seen over the past 3 to 5 years and making
But we're
it,
not gonna get 5 out of,
You want
Okay,
something
so-
budgeted, or would you
Right.
want something that, because we have budgeted revenue, then we have actual revenue that's come in,
Actual.
Actual is probably gonna be
Just show us
better.
actual,
Yeah,
'cause
just
even
let's
when
look at
we
the
have
actual.
discussion about the town office here, some of your wages are covered because we bill for your time at Valley
absolutely.
Recycling,
Yeah,
right?
Valley Recycling,
So those are
wages
things that
covered
it
by
would be good for
20,000.
them to
Correct.
see, to understand.
Yep.
There's an income coming into the town office because of work they do
Because
outside.
we're contracted elsewhere.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And Lori, it's not just them, it could be also us, we would benefit from some of that.
right.
Yeah.
The visuals, yeah.
I
Yeah.
can, I can
forget that
certainly,
you're the only one that's been here before. You guys are new too, just
I
like
can
me.
certainly, do a follow-up email to this meeting with 3 years of actual data, or 2 years, or, and just send a follow-up email. It's not.
Yeah, we're not doing anybody justice if we're gonna just arbitrarily make a decision based off looking at an expense and not really knowing what any type of revenue is for any given department.
Right.
I mean, you gotta understand both sides of that, okay, so,
And we got other ones coming up, like the rec department, stuff like that, there's revenues there
Yeah,
too,
we-
I'm sure
I mean,
we know nothing about that.
Yeah.
it's probably best if we can generate those 3 years of revenues for each department. Let's start looking at those, so this doesn't extend this process beyond where we're already looking to be. Probably help us get through this a little bit quicker,
Because the average Joe's looking at that big number, and that's the big number that he's,
yeah.
That's all he sees.
that's
Yeah,
all he
if
sees.
I go to explain this budget to somebody in the community,
They won't
I got a lot
understand.
of explaining to do, and I can't do it based off what I see here, is all it is, right? So it's not in support of or deny of, it's just the fact that we gotta look at the real numbers here somehow to compare, to know, so.
Good points, thank you. Gary, where are we?
Benefits, I
Sure,
think?
we were up to-
I think we're talking benefits.
still in that.
Yeah, we were at the first part of it.
Right, salaries and wages.
Yeah, pretty much over now.
So, moving down, employee benefits, that trend, Main State Retirement, health insurance, is going up. Well, we go through 23,000, for Main State Retirement. Last year we expensed, 21,337. Health insurance is 118,817. That has gone up. We can talk about that. I think we had some employees. You'll find that it's not straightforward when you look with the health insurance. It always asks us the question if you're wondering. Sometimes we have employees that are on their parents' plan, and so we don't in 1 year, and we don't have them as an expense. We have to provide them. But then they come off their parents and they get on ours. And so that happened, or we have some employees that have a spouse, they get their insurance somewheres, and so it's not always why did the insurance go up so much, the percentage. Sometimes it's the fact that how many people we have enrolled, the number of enrollment has changed in that department. Social Security, 24,887. Last year we spent 24,267, and employer Medicare, $5,820. Last year we spent $56,75. Any questions on employee benefits?
Are we still offering a lower amount, let's say for a single person, let's say it costs $8,000 for a year, and they have the option of getting insured with their spouse or somewhere else? Are we giving them a lesser amount and giving them that choice?
Yes,
We're still doing that?
yes.
Are we using it?
Are we using it? Like,
Is it being used?
Yes, it is being used.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, keep going.
Operating expenses, admin and billing services. So we contract out the billing services for the ambulance department. That takes care of billing, collections. There's a lot to it. Last year we spent 19,520. Questions on that?
How much money do we lose?
Do we lose?
Well,
Well,
not every bill is collected, right?
No, we roughly collect 70% of what we
70%?
charge is our collection ratio.
Yeah.
Clothing and safety equipment, 2,000. Last year we spent $3,748. Contracted services with ASI at $9,000. $9,000. Last year we spent $6,750. Questions on that?
That's
What
the
is-
emergency,
That's-
ASI is for kid in the hospital to back up in case something happens and
That's
we're not
mutual aid.
available. Mutual aid.
for coverage.
so that's what we pay out to get covered when we're not here.
When we're not available to cover.
Yeah, but we pay on a per call, right?
Per unit.
Yeah,
It's
That's
per
what's
call.
budgeted, but you don't necessarily spend it.
No.
correct.
Contracted services, emergency dispatch.
I have a question on that, Gary.
Yep.
The contract calls for just shy of 34,000. If you go 13, 13, 13, it's 39,000. Why is that?
Yep, I can answer that.
That's a good
So-
point, thank you, Bush. Yeah.
So inside there's some services for,
record management system.
Yep,
Okay.
It's also done by the sheriff's department, but to have access to that database, they charge extra on top of that.
Extra, okay.
yep.
Can you be a little bit
Sorry, I
louder
can't
for
hear
the
any of that.
explanation?
Part of the record management software and coverage, is that what you said? Record management,
The record management system, to
System.
have access to their database, where they put all the calls into. They charge extra for that.
and it gets allocated to that line.
Do you
That
use
is
that,
fine.
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah, there's times there when we're running pretty bad call, we don't have time to keep up with times, write down our times and
Okay,
stuff.
yeah, I've heard that.
And we can go
when
back
you
to
say
that
things on the radio, so
and,
yeah.
and use that, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Dues, subscriptions, and memberships. $100. Last year we expensed $474. $1,800 in certifications. Last year we expensed $665. $50 for postage, we didn't spend anything there. $50 for printing and advertising, we didn't spend anything there. And then travel and training, $4,200 last year we spent, which is the same as the previous year. We spent $31.44. Any questions on operating expenses? None? We'll move on to supplies. Office supplies, $600 is up from $300 last year. Up $300 from last year to $243. Questions?
Yeah, is there a reason?
Why would that double? Yeah.
Water. Because before, we were not paying for the water for the employees.
Oh, the allocations.
water- Yeah.
The
And
allocations.
we estimate about $300 a year, maybe a little under that for water for the staff, yeah.
General supplies, $400, which is flat from last year. Last year we spent $130. Medical supplies, you're down $3,000 from $28,000 to $25,000. Last year you spent $18,888, and I think the medical supplies is one of those lines that, you know, it depends how many calls they get, how many people they service, and how often you have to replenish.
Are we sharing that with Senegat and the other communities we service?
You know, we build them.
I would suspect that's part of the billing
Yeah.
cycle.
That's part of the billing?
Whatever's
When you bill
expensed
for
out
an
on
ambulance
call.
call, that's to help cover
Correct.
your costs for your supplies or whatever, yeah.
Any other questions on that? Oxygen, $2,000. Last year we spent $1,828. And that's down $200 from last year. $2,500 for telephone. Last year we spent $1,612. Questions?
We expecting more of the telephone charges?
Yes, as mentioned, in the past budget meeting, I'm starting to allocate per department.
Oh,
voice
yes, you did
system.
mention that last time.
So,
Okay.
Just to make, we used to, with the voice, internet, voice over internet, VoIP, we used to pay it all through,
the town.
through this budget. And now we're putting it out there to all the other budgets, accordingly, we're splitting it.
Okay.
Internet, $200, $600, which is the same as last year. Last year we spent $400. Minor equipment, we were at $8,000 last year. We brought that down to $2,000. That's a significant cut. Last year we spent $4,000. Eric, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, with minor equipment, that's like things like longboards, splints, you know, little things like that, pumps or anything like that. So if something would break, we'd have to replace. That would be an account that we would dip into. I was able to make a $6,000 cut on that line item. A lot of this equipment, if it needs replacing, I could always, you know, if it's above $2,000, we could always approach the board and ask to maybe
Go into
pull-
our reserve.
Right, pull out of our long-term reserve to replace that piece of equipment if we need to. Pretty much what that is.
Any questions? If not, repair, $2,200, which is down $50. Last year we spent $962, and that's for equipment.
And repair, yeah. Sometimes some stuff is repairable. We can get it fixed.
Vehicle and equipment, the gasoline, $10,000. Last year we spent $8,759. That's flat funded from last year. Repairs and maintenance, $10,000. Last year we spent $7,074. Again, that one is flat funded from last year. And that would be anything from repairs to the trucks, to the fleet, tires, oil changes, things like that.
Nope.
Dave?
Any questions?
Adam? No.
Okay, I got one. If I understand correctly, we got 3 ambulances and we pay somebody else to back us up? That's 4 ambulances?
If the personnel, they only have 2 crews, right? They have
Yeah.
the day crew.
Yeah.
Or the 24-hour crew, and then they have the standby crew.
Yeah.
But if both ambulances are out, then you don't have any employees available. And when that would happen, then that's when the call would go to ASI
Yeah.
for assistance.
Correct.
I don't know how many times a year it happens, but it does.
Last year, it happened 9 times.
So we still have a parked ambulance?
Yes.
Correct.
Madawaska still has
Yeah,
a
but
park?
no personnel to run it at that point.
So is it needed?
Well, if one goes down, then you have your second
It's,
one ready to go.
right, and to reiterate on that, is it has given us the availability to do transfers, which we've been doing a lot more recently, in fact. So we can do it, the long distance transfer, which is, there's some pretty good revenues to be
Yeah,
made in that.
definitely.
It does leave still 2 ambulances here full, that are staffed, to cover 911 calls at that point there, so. So it's given us a little flexibility as far as when we wanna do transfers, and then, also if we have one ambulance that goes down, it leaves us with another one there, so.
That expense from ASI, that's contracted service, is direct relation to the amount of usage that we have them provide, correct? Per call, okay, so it's an actual,
It's an actual.
They send us $750 bill.
Do we reciprocate with them too? Does that ever happen? No?
They don't call us.
They don't
We,
call us.
we did go once, last year, we went once, and, yeah, that was the only time.
We never got a call from Van Buren either.
Oh, yeah, we
We
get
do.
a call from them, more so recently, they've been having some struggles.
Okay, and
we've
we
been
do the same
there.
thing, we
Yeah.
would bill?
No, we
No?
don't, we don't bill them, and Van Buren backs us up too sometimes
Oh,
on
okay,
occasion.
and they don't bill us?
They don't bill us. It is
So like a
only,
mutual aid.
it's only our service to the west there that's been sending us the bill.
ASI has been as friendly to us as.
Yeah.
so if we, I hate to dig this far, I know, I'm just trying to understand this myself. So if we need ASI as a backup, because both of our crews are out, and they respond to coverage areas outside of the town of Madawaska, for example, they respond to Senegat, in turn, ASI bills our service, it bills us the 7, is that in turn flipped around and sent back to that town, or are we absorbing that because we can't provide the coverage that we?
Good question. It's a good point.
You would call the department or would not call Van Buren for a call in Frenchville or something?
No.
like that?
No.
It would have to be,
It's kind of like, yeah, on the east end of Madawaska somewhere, something in Van Buren, we'll call Van Buren first, anything.
Has Van
west
Buren
end.
ever come out to give us a hand?
A few times.
and they don't bill.
Do we know what percentage of those coverages from ASI happen outside of Madawaska by any chance? Is that information that we could look at maybe and?
Out of the 9 calls last year, I think it was 3.
In town?
No, that were
outside.
outside. I wanna say they were all in St. Agatha too. Yeah.
To speak to Ken, the point about the, transfers,
Yes.
that would be good to know for, in the income piece too.
Correct.
Mhm.
How much money's coming in from the transfers, so that if, we are paying the 30 days.
That's a hard number to pin down. Historically, we didn't get any, we're picking up more.
Right.
But, you don't know how many transfers you're gonna
Right.
get. ASI gets the lion's share of them. We get some, but it all depends,
It'd be good to know what, then it'd be good to have a goal. Like, if we have a 3rd ambulance, then maybe we can't do anything to change that this year, but then maybe we can say, for the next budget year, here's our goal. If we're gonna pay for a 3rd ambulance, then we need to be able to do at least this many transfers, or like, give us like the year to justify to have the 3 ambulances.
Cover the operating expense, I
You know.
guess, or the
Well,
maintenance
that's part of
costs.
the equation, but the other part too, or an important part, if we have one ambulance down, we need that 3rd ambulance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
There's definitely a benefit to the community, I mean, don't get me wrong.
Right.
We're looking at it from a budgetary standpoint.
But we got backup too,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
so,
we're,
How old's our oldest ambulance?
2010. So that one is gonna be up
How
for
many
discussion.
miles?
I'm sorry?
How many miles?
112,000.
Is this diesel?
Yes. The problem with us is it's everything else that gets it.
The body.
The body and
Chassis.
the rot and all that, unfortunately, that's what hurts us the most, yeah. But to go back with the revenues, just to give you, I actually got a recent number from billing about a transfer we had did. We actually collected on that particular transfer $2,230 on that one transfer to Bangor. So, and that's collected, that was collected for, and then, so that just gives you an idea of what a transfer to Bangor.
That's clear profit to the town of Madawaska?
Yes.
Or to the
Department.
Well, you still have to pay the wages of those people.
Well, yeah, right,
They're already on staff, but there'll be some overtime.
Yeah, sometimes it does acquire or accumulate some overtime, but sometimes we can get some people that are already on staff, and I can pull a driver into the station with another paramedic, that, you know, that can certainly reduce costs. But yeah, we gotta figure in those costs.
I think we'll get into, we'll have some revenues. I think when you think about an ambulance department,
There's a lot to that.
there's a lot to that, a lot of moving parts. But like anything else, there's an economy of scale applies.
Absolutely.
You know, and so, you know, it's not as straightforward as saying, well, how much we're calling, how much are we losing in that. We've got to look at the revenue that we're pulling in from those two municipalities that we wouldn't otherwise, and yes, we have more facilities, more resources, we have that other ambulance, you know, and maybe some more overtime, but yet we're drawing in a lot more revenue.
But it's hard for us to look at when we don't see the revenue.
Right.
Could be $10, could be 10,000.
I'd also like to add to main care recently, like just starting January 1, increased their rates, so we are getting more, I haven't seen numbers yet, but our billing department has said that those numbers are looking pretty good there. They've increased the reimbursements on that as well, so that's, again, that'll be with the revenues, once we get some of the reports from them, we can have better numbers.
And, Dan, you were saying that for budgetary purposes, you've always allocated somewhere around $300,000 for income, not knowing if it's gonna be higher or lower.
It typically is higher,
Yeah, but that's what you put in the budget,
yes.
300,
it's ranged like between
and if it's higher,
450
then it goes to undesignated funds,
No, if it's higher than $300,000,
right? If your income is higher,
yep, then it goes to their reserve account,
their reserve
the
account.
ambulance reserve account.
Okay.
So to sum
To
it up,
fund capital items,
so to sum it up, you're saying that first 300,000 helps to offset the budget,
that's correct.
and anything above the 300,000
Goes to the reserve.
And if we wanted to make it 4, then there'd be another 100,000 to offset the budget. Not that I would wanna go there, but
No,
I
but
wanna
we
make sure I
have,
understand.
we have done that,
We have that
like
flexibility,
2
right?
years ago, I
Yeah.
think. if I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
Yeah, we did that a couple
We
times.
did do
The
that a couple
other
years
thing
ago.
to look at this too, and like I do understand the whole questions about the 3 ambulances, which is why I'm asking the questions, but, skilled people are very hard to find. And allowing to have the transfers allows them a little bit of overtime and is a little bit of a draw for us to be able to have guys like this to work for the town. Because, you know, it's all about what they get paid, right? And it's really hard to find trained, people to do these jobs, and when it's your loved one, you really want them there, so.
If it's a medical transfer issue, you have to have a licensed paramedic.
That's what the
on board,
doctor
right?
orders. Sometimes there's some basic life support
Okay.
things that go down. Most of the time, it's all advanced life. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're gonna say, we want a paramedic
Yeah.
to go down, and if it's really bad stuff, they'll send a nurse with them, you know, to go down, things like that. But yeah, paramedic for sure.
Okay.
But when we send our paramedic to Bangor, do we have another one to cover him
Yep.
over here in town?
Yeah,
How many
I make sure
licensed
911
paramedics
calls
do you
are
have
covered
right now?
before I take any Bangor trips.
Yeah, how many paramedics do you have on staff?
Right now, we have,
Of your 6 full-time,
we got 4.
4 out of the 6?
Trying to think, there's me, Jess, Chris, Mike. Yeah, Brian's an advanced EMT, Elise is an advanced EMT, and Andrew is a basic at the moment.
Okay.
And we have a part-time paramedic, we do have one that's on the part-time pool as well, and some basics and drivers.
Do you, on your equipment, your ambulances, do you carry, any kind of programming to replace them? I mean, do you have a depreciation schedule at all that you follow? I mean, is there a 7-year rotation? Do you have any formula there that you're working with?
10 years.
10 years. 10 years is just the plan, or is it the depreciation that you're working with?
That's the depreciation I'm working with where we're at structurally with that ambulance 10 years down the road. Like right now, that one, that's the 2010, we got the rocker panels that are starting to run out. You know, so typically at 10 years, you start to see this deterioration of an ambulance, yeah.
Just for discussion's sake,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, when you buy a new ambulance,
Mm-hmm.
do you have 100% of the money in your reserves?
Yes.
We're not borrowing
No.
for a new ambulance.
That's really what I was.
Yeah, there we go, I understood that. Yeah.
Yeah, the account is healthy.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
All right, anything else on the ambulance? This is great discussion, by the way, this is good.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go on to Article 8, the proposed police expense budget, Department 310.
There's a hot seat.
So, starting at the top, salaries and wages, we're at 389, 832, and again, all of our departments, we haven't put in COLAs in raises this year. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I do. Right now you have a part-time admin or full-time?
Full-time,
And she's retiring?
end of December.
And with the new, dispatch going out elsewhere, like, has that job been cut? Is that still gonna be a full-time job come December, or are you able to get by with part-time?
I think right now we're in discussion to see the possibility of maybe combining two departments,
Okay.
or
Public Works.
this is a discussion we're having. I think the police department could get by with a part-time admin assistant.
Okay.
I thought that we'd had a meeting, I think in January, and there was mention that there was one policeman less in the department,
Yes,
and that's still ongoing.
yes.
And the total cost of that one policeman is not $10,000.
His salary was higher than that, but by losing that officer, there's shifts that we have to cover through overtime. So, there was a savings, but it's not a huge savings.
So we're having to pay overtime?
Yes, because we're 24/7. Each officer, say, has an average of 3 weeks vacation time that they take during the year, so I have to cover those shifts, and that's usually done through overtime.
So we're basically saving his health insurance. Or that's not part of it, that's not that line item.
That's not
Sorry.
that line item.
Wrong line,
Wages, 10,000 in wages. the
10,000
difference.
in wages. Do we need 24-hour, 24/7 coverage?
Yes.
Yes, we do. I can speak for that too. Because we get calls in the ambulance sometimes at night, or we want them with us, because we get some sketchy stuff sometimes.
We're averaging.
Sorry to put it that way, but.
We're averaging almost 4,000 calls of service a year. And which ends up late at night are the ones that the more serious ones come in.
You're also spending time investigating cases, right? Over and above regular time?
Those are usually done during the daytime. We kind of have Jamie Pelletier, who does the school resource officer. We've sent him just a lot of training to do the investigations. So any investigation that's gonna take longer than a day or two, Jamie will take it over so he can dedicate the time so it doesn't tie up the patrolman to handle other cases. A lot of it is specialized training, any of the sexual assault cases or the major stuff, so.
Are we relying more and more on video to help solve some of these cases?
Yes. Right now, the district attorney requires videos on just about every case that we
You
have.
can't really make a case today without having a video, basically.
So you're saying you're getting almost 12 calls, you said 4,000 calls per year?
Approximately 4.
So you're talking 10 to 12 calls per day?
Yes.
And that's actually called out calls. We're not talking about general patrolling and those sorts of
Correct,
things.
and
That-
that's not, and that's not including the calls that come in just by taken care of over the telephone. Those are
Correct.
actually responding to
911.
Situation.
911, dog complaints, traffic complaints, just regular law enforcement duties. car
About
accidents.
snowmobiles on sidewalks, do you have calls for that?
That's a discussion for another day.
How about people
I
putting
just want
snow
a
on the
yes or no.
road?
Yes or no?
Just myself and fire permits. I've created quite a few phone calls last year.
Okay,
Moving on.
Yeah.
State retirement, 39,373. It trends with the payroll. The percentage that means state retirement has us contribute. That's up from last year. Last year we spent 37,345. Health insurance, 107,826. So we did lose, we did have shed an officer, but I think we had somebody come on the
I
rolls.
think we have 2 officers that are aging out, that are under their parents' health insurance, that are gonna have to go on their own now.
Social Security at 24,170. Employer Medicare, 5653. And the police physical fitness benefit of $2,100. Last year we expensed $1,400. Any questions on employee benefits? Not? Other insurance, police insurance, police liability insurance, $6,200. Last year we expensed $5,097. Animal control on operating expenses, $500. Last year we spent $100. Clothing and safety equipment, $4,000. Last year we expensed $1,389. This year we're already at 6 months, we were at $1,823. Any questions on that one?
For safety equipment, is that all that go back to the general fund, or is that, or undesignated fund, or is that sent into a?
Whatever we don't spend goes into the undesignated fund surplus.
But they must have a reserve for patrol
Safety
cars.
equipment, I mean,
So
We
when,
have a reserve.
when we
there
budget
is,
to-
okay, that's what I'm asking, okay.
If we budget to anything that's called a reserve account, it'll be called that, and we'll budget directly
Okay.
to that.
Okay,
Unless there would be the warrant article in the town warrant would say
Yeah.
something like, whatever's not spent in this particular line item will go to the surplus.
okay.
Into a specific reserve account, but it'll identify that as a reserve. So,
I don't wanna get tied up on this too long. I know we talk about reserve accounts for the cover of a replacement for an ambulance, or replacement for a cruiser, or things like that. Is there a similar account for smaller equipment? I'll say like a AED or a defibrillator or something like that. Is there an account that's set up where those funds go in there, so when they need to replace that equipment, there's funding available, or is that?
So Eric, for the ambulance department, it's only one fund.
Okay.
So, and basically the board of selectmen control that fund as far as if Eric needs something from
Okay.
that, Mr. Board meeting gets something on
So
the
it
agenda,
draws from
and
his fund.
I got
then
it.
they approve it.
Is it similar for
And the
you?
PD has the same exact
Okay,
thing.
I was trying to understand if that would fall under something else, or if that's something that pops up later on.
Is the cruiser fund healthy?
Yes, I can tell you what's in here.
We have enough for one more vehicle.
half a vehicle? One more vehicle.
Did you hear me?
what?
That or-
I'm sorry, 43,000.
43.
43?
That or 2 Prius?
Is that the Corbin account?
Yes.
But that's not funded year over year, right?
There's a small amount of revenue that goes in from fines or fees, like parking tickets, court officer fees, witness fees.
I'm talking a max of maybe $1,800.
800,
1,800,
1,800 a year,
that'd be a good
roughly?
year.
Yeah.
That would be a good year.
That would be a good year,
Mhm.
yeah, so.
Any other questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Contracted services, $13,500, that's for the emergency dispatch with the USO. Last year we spent $1,763.31. Ross, maybe,
Oh, why it was more?
yeah?
There was some setup
Set up
fees.
costs associated with that, I remember that, yeah.
Dues, subscriptions, memberships, $350. Last year we spent $325. That's flood funded. $500 for evidence. Last year we spent $19. $250 for printing and advertising. Last year we spent $120. prison meals transport, $600. Last year we spent about $10. Travel and training, $7,500. Last year we spent $28.71.
Is there a reason why there's a big difference like that, as a comparison?
This year we have an officer coming that's gonna be going to the academy.
Okay. Is that still an average of roughly $30,000 for that training?
And they've upped it to 40,000.
40?
You mean it went up?
They're better trained, right?
I hope so.
So to recap, like for that operating expense, that class of accounts there, it's $27,200. That's up $100 from last year. Office supplies, $1,300. Last year we expensed $521. General supplies, $150. Last year we spent $83. Second page, utilities, $3,500. Last year we spent $4,058. We'll talk about that.
What is that? What?
That was a telephone. I
Y'all
guess.
got some high-tech telephones in this town, man.
And the costs, last year there was issues with the 911 system, I guess, getting us off of it when we switched over to the sheriff's department, so we had to pay for more months than we thought we were gonna have to, I guess, and it took a while to straighten out, but.
Any other questions?
Following your, that's why we went to 4,000, is what you just explained. But we're also increasing it by 1,000
From last year?
from last year.
And that's because Dana had said that we're now including the VoIP, she's breaking it
Oh,
up to per department.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
$400 for internet. Last year we spent $400. Minor equipment, electronic equipment, $500. Last year we spent $498. Repairs of minor equipment, $100. Last year we didn't spend nothing. Vehicle and equipment, gas, diesel, propane, $11,500. That's the same amount we put in for last year. Last year we spent $11,268. Repairs and maintenance of vehicles and equipment, $4,500. And last year we spent $393. So the overall budget for the police department has gone up about $4,000 over last year. Any questions?
And that one has no real revenue. That's really
No,
offset.
very minimal.
And
So you will be driving a Prius.
No other questions on the police department?
I have a small question. I don't know if I'm not getting this, but it seems to me that in the first budget that we went through, we had accounted for $33,000 for dispatch for all departments. And that was part of that budget, and now we're adding the same expenses to these individual budgets?
No, that expense is being allocated to 3 departments. So that 33 divided by, let's say, 3.
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
That's what's being put in their budgets.
Where's the first time we had seen that 33 there?
Right?
That was on the letter from
Yeah.
the sheriff. That's going to be in your packet. $33,846.75 was the total
This
of
is not
that.
double that, Dave.
Okay,
It's not a double,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, Article 9, fire expense budget, Department 320. Jim's right in the back.
Chief, you gonna do it from the back? Your department's next, you can do it from back there? I can do it from the back.
He must have the biggest increase. He's over there in the back there, he's hiding.
Can reach us with the water hose from
Yeah,
back
yeah.
there.
So the fire department budget has been, we'll go through it line by line, it's been flat year after year, so. Salaries and wages, $64,600. Anybody have any questions on that? That's pays for the chief's per diem part-time status and all of the volunteers that we pay for calls.
Chief, do we have new members in your fire department now?
Yeah, we've gained a couple.
We did.
Every 6 months I put out, well, matter of fact, this year we put on the sign in town. I got a better response than having a single down. And we get a couple every year, so. yeah.
Okay. But you're still not where you want to be?
No, not yet. No, we're at about 40, and I like to be up a little more than that. The more you are, the better rate you have for insurance and stuff like that.
What do you pay per hour for a fireman?
Not much, obviously.
No.
Okay, keep going, under benefits.
Employer Social Security and $4,005. Last year we spent $42.81. Employer Medicare $937. Last year we spent $934. Operating expenses are clothing and safety equipment $4,500. Last year spent $2,065. Background checks $200. Last year we spent $279. Dispatch, emergency dispatch, $13,000. Last year, it's the same price that Ross had, it's $18,650. Dues and subscriptions, $800. Last year was $828. Employees' physicals, $750. Last year was $8,081. Miscellaneous, $500. Last year was $12. Professional fees, $4,000. Last year was $3405. Anybody have any questions what professional fees are? Jim, can you talk about that a little bit?
When you're saying, excuse me, when you're saying last year, Gary, it's a little deceiving for people that are listening somewhere else there. But what you're actually saying is from July of last year to December 31st.
When I say last year, I say fiscal year.
Right,
The whole year.
exactly, which
July
is,
1 to June 30. July 1 to June 30
well,
of the following
this last
year.
column here that you've been talking about here is starts June 30 to the end of of 19.
Yeah, just where it says year-to-date expense there, just ignore those words.
Just
Because
look-
it's actually previous year's.
If you look on the
activity.
cell up over
Oh,
the top,
previous
previous
year.
year activity.
Yeah.
So ignore this stuff here.
Yeah.
Jim?
Okay, for professional services, what it does, it's sending our firemen to trainings and schooling, there's money for that. Our yearly CPR classes, we have to pay for. Our yearly fire extinguisher testing, every year we have to have them tested. If we have a fire, if we need an extinguisher refilled, it pays for that. Because we have firefighters with ear packs, we have to have a yearly ear pack testing. All the ear packs have to be tested. Make sure they're 100%. These firefighters go into a building, they have to work. Air pack repairs, it pays for that also. If we have air packs are 30, maybe at least 30 years old. So we need to keep those, keep parts for those. Also parts for the air packs and SCBA bottle hydro tests. SCBA bottles, every 5 years we have to send them out and have them hydro tested. So there's money for that also. So that's what the professional fee is.
Travel and trading, $750, and last year we spent $800. Recap that operating expense, class of expenditures, it's $25,250, which is slightly less than last year's. Budgeted amount of $25,360, and what we spent last year was actual spent was $26,400. Moving on, supplies, office supplies, $1,000. We spent $967. General supplies, $1,500. Last year we spent $1,907. Utilities, electricity, $1,100. We spent $754. $3,200 for telephone. Last year we spent $25.98. Again, the same would apply for VoIP. system, that costs are being put into that. Heating fuel, associated for the fire department, $3,500.
Isn't that a little different with the 1533 spent last year?
Back.
Well, if you look at the prior year, we spent 1533, and yet the trend has been to budget 3,500 over 2 years, 18, 19, 19, 20. We're keeping that 35, but last year we spent roughly half of it.
That's the heating fuel for station number 2 for the lake.
I didn't hear you.
That's the fire station at the
Station
lake,
number 2.
station number 2.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Not that that answers your question, but that gives you a location
Yeah.
and Jim can,
We'll have a better number for what,
After we get the
after we get our
bids.
bids in, and the bids will be opened at our next board meeting in March 9.
Yeah.
The goals just went up. Internet, $400. Last year we spent $400. Moving on, the second page, minor equipment. Software computer, $675. Repair of minor equipment, $5,800. And last year was $5,937. Any questions? None? Vehicle equipment, gasoline, propane, we budget $4,000, last year we spent $22,72. Repairs and maintenance of the vehicles and equipment, $9,000, and last year we spent $72,87. Questions? I don't expect that's, for the age of our equipment, that's a number that's gonna go down anytime soon. Building repairs and maintenance, the safety building, $1,000. Last year we spent $830. Hoses, $4,300. Last year we spent $4,496. Moving on down, we had some zeroed out accounts that were zeroed out of account last year, such as the Ford 550 engine, the NFP code book. Those are no longer expenses that we have, but we're showing them, we're still keeping them till they phase out because we wanted to do that 3-year activity. SCBA compressor lease, we replaced our compressor. We are in our second year of a 5-year lease payment plan on that one.
And that's a lease to own.
Yes.
Oh, nice, okay.
Yeah.
So I have a general question on, I guess, to the chief. I know there's some underlying issues with one of the trucks with some rot around some of the cabs, things like that. I mean, conditionally for the town, is this budget allowing us to maintain us where we need to be? I know we're in somewhat of a budget crisis here, but I mean, at the end of the day, we gotta be realistic with ourselves, and, you know, there's places that we can look at, and there's places we can cut and trim and do whatever we wanna do and cut some fat. But we're putting people in positions, that may lead them to shortchange themselves, you know, and based off what I know, and I don't know any of this to be true, that's why I'm asking, are we in a position where I know, correct me if I'm wrong, our rates have gone up because of the failure on some of our equipment, and we're unable to provide the level of service that we had in the past. Is that not correct?
Our insurances for house insurance have gone up between $100 to $300 per person right now because of not having that extra truck that I've asked.
So whether we spend it here or we spend it at home, one way or the other, we're gonna spend that money. And if we spend it at home, we're not ever gonna get any better than what we have down there. So at some point, you know, we're gonna have to consider, you know, but if I just sit here and look at a budget and you tell me you're good to go, right? But realistically, we need to make sure that we're funded at an adequate level at the same time. You know, and I'm not saying across all budgets are maybe under or overfunded, that's not what I'm getting, but I feel that this one may be underfunded.
Yeah, years ago, there was a reserve for.
You don't have a reserve?
And then that reserve went away.
That went away.
And
It got stopped.
so we have a
We're not
reserve
putting
account
any
for an
money back.
ambulance, we have a reserve account for
Yeah.
police car,
Police, yeah.
but our
We
fire
don't have
department
one for
doesn't
the fire
have that.
department.
So, you know,
This all goes back the recession of 2008.
Yeah.
And the mills, the bankruptcy of the mill and the sale of the mill, and the reduction in their assessed value, and that school limited towns cutting their respective budgets to try to hold the mill rate, because everybody was in a recession, not only the mill, it was everybody, and so the economy was bad. And so they held the line, and they cut. And the easiest places to cut in town budgets are capital lines, okay? Paving, equipment replacement, reserve accounts. And so you can do that, and you can mitigate, the impact of the mill rate, which is fine. But those expenses never go away, and you end up having deferred maintenance, and then you end up at hitting a wall when you have it reserved. So I'm a big fan of reserve accounts, because what it allows you to do is to flatten out major expenditures over a period of time, and it helps to stabilize the mill rate. When you don't have reserve accounts, and all of a sudden you have an expense, you have these big jumps and these big anomalies that take place and that are destabilizing to the budget. So I've always said, when I worked with this board coming from a town that had a lot of reserve accounts, well-funded, and we got here, and it was like, wow, not good. I understand the reason for it. Things had to happen. Our goal has been to try to get back to that funding reserves, so that our departments, and our big ticket items, what are typically called capital paving large paving projects, vehicle purchases, fire trucks and stuff like that. We try to utilize grants from the FEMA assistance to fire departments. It's very, very competitive. Some years they don't have focus on trucks, some years they award equipment. So you're kind of chasing that. Maybe you can get lucky and get a grant. We would have a match obligation. We put in an application every year for FEMA monies to try to help out.
As an example, Jim, if we bought a new truck and what's the price of a new truck today?
Well, I know at the beginning of the year we had talked about, you had given me the okay to look for one. It takes me about 6 months to get one, spec'd, okay? And in 2013, 2014, 2016, I was looking at it a while ago. I had spec'd one at $400,000. And that's not with any toys, that's just a basic necessary items. Matter of fact, it's without hoses, it's without any equipment, it's just a truck.
Now, because of our rating, the number going, bigger number, which is costing us residents and
Right.
all of our insurance, what type of truck and how much would that cost that would change that classification in a
That-
positive way for us?
Going through that truck like today,
Yeah,
I got it down to 400,000.
400,000.
Okay, 400. And we can lease that truck for 5 years. It takes a year before you get that truck. And you don't have to pay a payment until that year, until that truck is delivered, all right? And back then, it was $70,000 a year for a lease. It can go 5 years, it can go 7 years. And at the end of the lease, you give them $1 and it's your truck.
It's yours, yeah.
You know?
And those trucks will last,
Well, the newest one I have now is 20 years old.
see?
The one at the lake is 40. And right now, I got paperwork right here, I don't know if you wanna see it, but it's, all the things that are wrong on the trucks, and they have to be sent to Augusta to be repaired. I got one, the tank is ready to fall through the chassis. I got the one at the lake, that the cab is down on the frame, there's no more rubber supports. The pump is meshing the gears on it. I mean, they've done their time, But what's gonna happen, like Gary was saying, if we don't do something soon, we're gonna lose another truck, Our class, we've always had a class 5 in town, which was the best you can get for volunteering. We're up to a class 6, right? And if we go up to a class 7 or 8, your insurance rates go up, because the insurance is what looks at the overall picture, and they go and they see how much water you flow, they see the hydrants, they want to see how many trucks we have, they want to see, and for us, we're not pumping what we need to pump because we want the trucks.
Is that the key there? Your pumping is not up to par?
Right, because of everything here in town, the mill and everything, I need to be able to pump 4,750 gallons.
Mhm.
Right now, I got one pumper, and they pump 1,250. The other pumper's 1,250, And the ladder doesn't count as a pumper, it counts as a ladder. So you get a little bit, but what they did is, the town needs 3 pumpers. So what the insurance rate did, they took the pumper, cut it in half and said, we'll give you half a pumper and half a ladder to try to help a little bit on the class rate. So we need that extra.
So how much more time before we lose another truck?
Right now I can put them down now. Really, they're not safe.
But
The
I
one
mean,
at the lake.
as far as the insurance is concerned or classification, they're gonna come back in
How
1 or
often
2
do
years
they-
from now and
is it
say,
2 or 3 years, they usually come
2 or 3
back.
years from now, they're gonna say, your oldest truck, we're taking that one out too.
Yeah.
This is a discussion that we have every year.
Yeah.
We have a
Put
heart to
money in
heart,
last year.
come to Jesus moment. here.
So, you know,
This is a survival budget for that department. It's not adequate. We've had this discussion every single year. Because if we don't have, we gotta make the place mark at some point in time. And we've been doing it.
I'm not here to create a budget or insinuate something one way or the other, but at the end of the day, you know, if you tell me my tax rate's going up, I'm gonna get a little upset. If you tell me it's going up because we gotta replace a fire truck, it's perceived a little bit different, right? So, you know, at the end of the day, we can look at this budget, and this budget has gone up $300
Yeah.
over last year.
Over last year.
What the hell are you gonna do with $300 to get that any better than where we're at? Are we gonna nurse another 40-year truck into 80-year truck?
Yeah.
You know, at some point, you know, and it's not up to me, I'm just speaking from where I'm sitting, but at some point, between that board and this department, gonna have to come up with a plan. This, at some point, is gonna bite us somewhere along the line at the tune of nearly $500,000. So it's either you start addressing it now, or you're gonna look at a significant increase like that.
So
Well,
three,
it's not-
three,
You're not just talking one truck. It's
No,
gonna happen. You
there's-
end up having to replace multiple units all at
I
once.
mean, last year we spent $40,000. We allocated $40,000, 20,000 for the ladder truck, 10,000 for the
For
E4,
repairs.
and 10,000 for the E2. Those are just Band-Aids.
Yeah, and I have the sheet on that, and what we have left, I know you had told me we would
Yeah,
put it
but
in
it's
there.
just,
Because right now, I have to fix the trucks, bring them to Augusta, $54,000, okay? With the money left over, it would bring it down to 30,000, 35,000 that I need to repair these trucks because they're not 100%. The guys came up this summer and they made them so they at least pump water. So we're pumping water now. So we're safe with that for now. But, you know, it don't make sense, it just.
so because, let's talk reserve accounts. Traditionally, there was a reserve account for the fire department, and I believe that's how you paid for your ladder truck, probably the last truck you bought, right?
Yeah, and then the reserve went away after that.
And then it went away after
Yeah.
that. But now,
What
from what
year
I
was that, Jim?
understand,
Huh?
What year was that ladder?
2005?
Yeah.
from what I understand now, they've combined, there is like a big, not a big, but a reserve account that's not dedicated to any one department. Am I right with that, Gary?
no,
No,
There is not a reserve account out there,
no.
none at all.
no.
I was led to
That,
believe
with your words, that
Designated.
is not dedicated. The reserve account,
Undedicated,
all the reserves are dedicated.
they are dedicated.
Yeah.
I don't know where I picked that up, but I thought there was a reserve account and then, okay.
I don't
Now,
know.
the Public Works as well has a dedicated reserve account, and and they're down to zero as well?
I'm not sure what their
Yeah,
amount is
Public
right now.
Works, small-
Jim, can I ask you something while we're looking?
Yeah, go.
Does the census, does the population of the town, does that come into play at all? Do they decide, based on the number of people that are living within that community, how they rate you? Or is it all rated on?
They do a little bit, but the biggest part is what you have for houses, for your businesses.
But I think his point needs to be emphasized just a little bit, because if I remember, I don't have it in front of me, but based on the 2010 census,
Right.
we were above that threshold that triggered some things to occur
Right.
against us. The new census is going to be below that threshold, I think. I don't know what that means for your
I
ISO.
don't think because that doesn't change what they look more at the businesses, like Fraser and, you know, the schools, you know, all those businesses, that's what they look at. I mean, yeah, you're right, you know, they might, there is a percentage, there's a chart, and they have all kinds of percentages, how much residential you have, and how many stories, that makes a big difference. Single story, 3 stories, that makes a difference in their scope that they have.
So if you went down to 2 trucks, what would be created? What would happen?
We'd probably go to a class 9 like Frenchville and go down.
So class between 5 and 10?
10 is
the
no,
worst?
is nothing. That's 10, you're not even,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we already know volunteer firefighters just aren't showing up at the door every day, right? That's declining. It's not just Madawaska, it's everywhere. The equipment's getting older, it's getting harder and harder to replace it. What we do have is failing, probably sooner rather than later. You know, at the end of the day, again, I'm a little concerned we're under budget, or under funding this particular department. And, you know, if my house caught on fire tonight, I could care less if you save my structure, but get my family out. And beyond that, if there's a fire at that elementary school, or a fire at our high school, or a fire at that mill, which is our largest employer, are we really able to do what we need to do? Think about that.
Well, we're certainly falling behind,
Look at some of the
That's
big
for
cities.
sure.
There's been some big fires in cities that are close. I mean, we have homes that are close, and it doesn't take much to take off. And when you ain't got the equipment, you know, we're asking them to work, make miracles happen as it is.
I got a question, Don. To have something put on the warrant, would that go through the board?
Yes,
If, you know,
yes, we
instead
could do
of,
that. Yeah.
instead
Let
of
the taxpayer
thinking,
decide.
let the taxpayer, yes
Yeah,
or no.
that's a good point, Jim.
And I think that would,
That's a good point, yeah.
that would
I agree.
decide, you know, I can get you what the truck costs and let's say the lease and stuff.
There we go.
Give you everything, and then from there, you guys would know, say, you know, this is what it would cost, and if there is a millage rate, increase or not, I mean, you guys would know.
Yeah, but then we'd be asking our people who pay the taxes, do you
What do you
want this or not?
Right.
You know?
If we go
The
with,
way I look at it, I paid in taxes, paid on insurance. Take a pick.
if we go with like the loan program, are we still required to pay the 53 to Augusta?
The
Are we
repairs,
doing
Oh.
both?
what's the repairs?
I'm assuming that we're gonna have to pay the repairs
No
since
matter
he's got
what.
a whole
Because
1
it's
year.
a year away before.
So it'd be a
It's
new
gonna be a
truck plus
Yeah.
the repairs.
Yeah.
Right, he's got a whole year
Yeah.
wait before you get
Yeah,
that order.
there's a whole year before.
And every year you put it off, it's gonna get a bigger and bigger expense to us, right? So at some point, you gotta address that problem. And I don't think this budget's allowing that to happen. That's just my own opinion, so.
Board, can we make that type of decision tonight? That we want to put a certain amount with, Jim will come, give us that
I
information?
think we should consider it.
I should consider it for the future, for our
I
next.
think it should be
next town meeting?
considered, yes.
no reason not to put it out there.
Yeah. I
Really?
agree, I agree.
So I don't know what's the motion need to be, and I'll make it.
We have to, I think before you make any motions, I think we need to figure out, you know, when that first debt payment would be, whether we would fall in this fiscal year that we're working on right now or not.
I think once Jim makes his proposal to the board, and then we decide to put it on the warrant, I think at the time we can vote for that, right?
Yeah. We
We don't need a
yeah.
vote tonight.
But we would, you know, I think that,
It won't be- I guess my
we
point
we
is,
would wait
Jim-
till July 1st to go and go through the process, so that in 2021, we may not have to make a payment, initial payment. We might have enough money, and then the year after that.
See, if we make a loan in this next fiscal year, it'll be due the following next, you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
So I just want
It'd
to
be good to wait.
figure
yeah.
out the timing,
Yeah.
so that at least the first payment would be.
Yeah, that's
not
good.
Depends when the
necessarily-
truck comes in.
Do we need to do something?
Depends when the
with
truck
It
comes
depends,
in.
if it comes in within 9 months, then.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be at least a
No,
year,
we'll have to.
at least.
At least a year.
Before we continue, is there a motion to continue beyond 2 hours?
I make a motion, we continue to 8:30.
Oh, almost there. Yeah, motion by Dave. Is there a second? Done. All in favor? Okay. Lori, ask your question again?
I mean, do you need to we need to change the repair or revisit the repair amount on here for sure?
The
Under
repair?
my understanding, you need $50,000 to repair
still
the truck
need
I
to
would
the
need,
gas.
Well, he's got some money, right?
I would need 35,000, because we had money left over from last year.
Yeah.
So at 35,000, I'd be saved there to bring the trucks, transport them there. Like E4, the one at the lake, I can't drive that thing.
So where does the 9,000 come from?
Who said that?
Repairs.
Am I here, repair, maintenance?
Down here?
Yeah.
So where, under, vehicle and equipment,
Yeah,
line 500,
Yeah.
really should say 35, or should it say 35 plus 9?
no, that would be under a capital, right, a capital.
They're on a different
They're
line.
giving the option,
Oh, okay.
basically, that if they're gonna put an additional 35,000 in,
Yeah.
then you use it all within this year. So if you put it in your expense budget, then you use it this year. Whatever you don't use will roll to surplus. If you put it in as a one-line article number, then, and you put it to reserve, then it will swing over to your reserve, and there's no time limit. They're the.
Yeah, because I won't be able to do anything until this spring.
Okay, so
Before
we
I
don't need to
do
change
anything.
it.
Don't need to change it, yeah. I think we've answered that, yeah.
Thank you.
I think, you know, and we've had this discussion before, when we have expenses like this that we're considering that would not necessarily be a normal year-to-year expense, that we put that into a capital line, because when people can see their budget year to year, and you see, oh, well, what happened here, and then why did it go down? So when you put it on the capital side, you know, it shows that here's your operating, it takes out all the anomalies, if you will.
Not as insulting.
When are you making those repairs?
Not till this spring, till the roads are better and stuff, because this time of year is a bad time right now, with, you know, could have a chimney fire, could have a house fire, it's not a good time, so I wanna wait later this spring when the roads are better, so I can drive them down. I can drive two of them, like I said, the third one I need to transport.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's all
So
included.
we'll talk about where you're gonna get the funds for that?
Yeah.
Okay, continue, Gary, with the safety building repairs.
Yeah, done on that one.
Yeah, is this
We did that one?
safety
We're done-
building?
We're done.
Yeah,
fire
we
department.
can lay down.
Yeah.
Oh, we went through that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay,
Apartment 325, is that where?
Apartment 325 is the EMA expense budget.
Emergency management. Jim, would you talk about what emergency management is before we?
Emergency management is something we have to have in every town, and you have to have a director in each town, so I'm the director for the town of Madawaska. In case there'd be an incident, it doesn't have to be a big disaster, but if there's an incident, we'd be able to have what I call a EOC. It's a room we have at the safety complex where we could have people there that would do communication to help us get resources. If I need resources, I'm out in the, let's say out on the field. I can call these people and say, listen, we got a big fire, I need a place for these people to have rehab, I need water, I need whatever I need mutual aid from Fort Kent, or they do that. So, you know, it's a lot of that. There's also some funding that has to come from EMA. Well, we lost that right now. I might be missing a lot of other stuff, but I'm hooked with Darren Woods out of Terrible. And he's a great resource and asset to the town of Madawaska. I mean, if there's anything we need.
He's been a strong advocate over the years.
Yeah.
Worcester County Management.
Yeah.
Worcester Management Agency, yeah. So he's, that's what this is, this program. We've had it since I've been on, we started this, and it's working its way. The EOC room is something I really want to see going. It's going a little bit, but we've cut funds for a while, and we've taken a lot of the funds from this, and we have generators up at the tower, at the emergency tower. We have a generator at the school. I'm trying to get that generator at the school running.
Oh, it's still not operational?
We got it running.
Oh, you got it running.
But I had just enough funds to get it running. I had enough to buy the batteries and connect the fuel and put some fuel in the tank. That's it, I ran out of money.
Yeah.
So I just, the 2,500, we don't go far, but we do a little every year. It's better than nothing. This year, I'd like to do a little more with it if I can. Plus, to maintain it, I need some money to maintain the generators. Because the school, the elementary school, is our Red Cross. So if something would happen as a shelter, that would be the place. If you get an ice storm or something, right now, a generator, I'd have to get some electricians in there. We'd have to hopefully get the Public Works and try to start it up and hope it runs. But
Is there,
it's
is
a
there an
good
automatic
unit.
transfer switch on that, or is that?
No, right now, that's the thing. The only one that has the key is me, and I'd have to flip the switch and close my eyes.
Yeah, hope for the
Because
best.
the transfer switch was $25,000, and we didn't have the money. So, that's where we're at.
So what do you have, a manual transfer switch?
Yeah, a manual, you gotta go there and shut one off and don't turn them both on at the same
No.
time.
Okay.
because
You're gonna blow if you.
You're gonna go.
if you-
Well, we're gonna do something for sure. That
Yeah, but I
generator
mean,
was a donation, right, to us?
No, that generator,
Yeah, the
that
electrical
was back when
company
Norman
from the
had it.
Don't know
At
about
Norman
that,
was
but
cheap. He bought it through
Doesn't that
Carey.
just kind of
They used
reverse
to run
everything back
Carey.
and give?
Yeah, it does.
Did we actually buy it?
Bought it for $12,000.
Okay, it was a small amount of money.
Yeah, but it's a big generator, I think would run half the town, I think.
Yeah, it's over 1,000, right?
Yeah,
KVW.
yeah, it's a big generator. So that's what the EMA.
And you're saying that every town has a EMA budget?
I don't think every town has one, but they have a director.
Have a
You need to
director?
have a director.
I think you see a larger budget in the larger towns, you know, it's not a large budget.
Is it fair to say that the EMA and the fire department is quite a bit higher in this town because we have a large industry in town?
Don't confuse the EMA for hazmat.
Okay, well, maybe that's what I'm confused.
Yeah, that's not the same.
Yeah.
But
Your
hazmat is
budget,
self-funded.
your hazmat, it's self-funded, your hazmat?
Hazmat is state funded, there's no.
State funded and
Okay.
memberships.
And
There are a few
memberships,
businesses in
memberships
town.
that pay into it, there's nothing that comes from the town. And it's a great asset for the town, it helps out the town quite a bit.
Can we have them buy our new truck?
We don't have enough money, we don't have enough money in our reserve.
I know a guy that raised a heck of a lot of money for a festival, maybe he could raise some money for a fire truck. We could.
No, he
though.
hasn't left the building yet,
We
Chris.
could put a thermometer down by the fire station, Chris, and we could have some fundraising.
To do a lot of things.
I make a motion, he gives it a shot.
Moving on.
Okay, are we okay with the EMA right now?
We haven't gone through it.
But it's self-explanatory right
Right, you
there.
wanna go through it, or for the sake of the
Yeah.
discussion here, or?
I'm fine with it. I mean,
The only thing would be that infrastructure communication tower, the only off one is that $1,000 extra
Yeah,
dollars.
that came over from Department 135, the safety complex building.
Okay.
Used to be in Gerald's budget. And since Jim's now taking it over, we moved it over to where it needs to be in the EMA.
Taking care of the
So
communication.
it's just basically shifting from one department to the other. So it's not additional expense, it's a.
Okay.
We have, let's take a look at the calendar. Did you get the memo, and I believe you may have, that our next budget meeting will be on March 9th? And that'll be a 6 o'clock meeting. Okay,
The board meeting starts at 5, and then we're gonna stop.
we're gonna adjourn wherever we are at 6 o'clock, and we'll go into the budgets. And then we have to stay a little bit longer after, then we'll finish our meeting.
That's gonna get
Which day
advertised
is this
as
again?
Monday the
Selectmen and
9th.
Finance Committee,
So
correct?
our,
The 5th, there was the 5th, and that was canceled.
but we have both the regular meeting and budget on that day?
That's correct.
And the,
The selectmen starts at 5,
okay.
and the budget starts at 6. Right, and then at that meeting, we'll decide when and where, what time and what date for a future meeting. Okay? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mark. Moved by Lori, seconded by Doug.
Don, can I ask you something?
No, you can't.
Okay. On Jim's request there for a reserve that we used to have, the story behind that reserve is when Christine was here as town manager, Norman Sear wanted that ladder truck. If Norman Sear got the ladder truck, the reserve would stop for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, it was supposed to start back up, and never did. That's what happened.
probably
So
what
now-
happened, yeah.
So now we're at this point now.
Norman Sear deal.
And now we're at this point, now that we're so far behind in the fire department, it's scary. Okay, so
instead of him making a warrant for his warrant to make a motion to buy a new fire truck, which is fine, why don't you not include rebuilding, restarting a reserve account of $100,000 a year? Out of the $100,000 a year, that's gonna pay for the new fire truck. The rest of the money goes into the reserve.
But if we do it that way, Mark.
Yeah.
I understand what you're trying
Yeah.
to say, but if we do it that way, it's gonna take 5 years before we can get the truck.
No, no. If the new truck passes, we've got $100,000 in reserve that we're putting for the reserve. That also pays for the brand new fire truck. So if the brand new fire truck is $66,000 a year, the rest of the money goes into reserve. So the reserve is being built at the same time the truck is being
So the
paid for.
amount, your reserve amount would have to be over the 66.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need to keep that reserve beyond, once the truck is paid for, at 100,000 to start replacing these old trucks that's in there. Just a matter of time before a major fire goes off in this town, and we're not gonna be able to take care of it. We're gonna need all the supply around towns, plus Canada, to put it out. Okay?
We hear.
We hear.
Okay, so, huh?
Discussion.
It'd be nice to put 100 in, but it's 100 more we have to pay in taxes.
Sure, you can, you can cover it, but they have to go to 4.